A lot of games like to open with something bombastic that really knocks you off your feet, but some games do things a little differently. Instead, they choose to confuse the hell out of you. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 mind-blowing opening levels in video games. Just a quick note before we get started. Yeah, we're talking about games that start with the crazy dial turned up to 11, but we're sticking mostly to recent games here, so we'll probably miss a couple of things, but obviously we can always come back for a part 2 in the future. Starting off with number 10, it's Psychonauts 2. We'll start off with something from just this year. This is a game all about going inside people's heads, and the series has never been afraid to get a little psychedelic. So unsurprisingly, the intro to this game gets pretty strange right from the get-go. The first Psychonauts ended with the main character Raz joining the titular organization, and at the start of 2, we see him beginning his internship program in a decidedly less exciting workplace than you would expect. Instead of starting with some big psychic adventure, you're tapping away on a computer. You're an office drone, not a hero. Raz straight up says he thought and expected more. Of course, it quickly becomes obvious what's actually going on. The whole thing actually takes place inside the mind of the enemy from the first game, Dr. Lobato, and you're trying to trick him into revealing who he's working for. Once the jig is up, that's when things start to really get strange. The office starts to look more and more like the inside of someone's mouth, with flesh and teeth coming out of the walls. It's actually a little grotesque. The cartoony art style makes it a little less nasty, but it's still weird as hell. And as far as mind-blowing openings go, this is a really fun one, although maybe not as shocking or bizarre as some of the other ones on this list. And number 9 is No More Heroes 3. 2021 has had some weird opening levels, but this is one of the most strange, disorienting openings ever, let alone this year. Seriously, it's just a non-stop barrage of weirdness. The first level isn't even really a level. The game starts with you playing a game within a game called Deathman, a grungy beat-em-up that's equal parts goofy and unsettling. Seriously, I went in this game expecting crazy, but I did not think that it would just start with a different game. And that's just the beginning. From there, you get into this totally mad Studio Ghibli mixed with Steven Spielberg's E.T. opening cutscene and the cavalcade of nonsense that is the opening alien invasion and the ridiculous first boss. And honestly, the whole beginning part is probably the best part of the entire game. The game itself is a huge troll of a game. It's stupid, frustrating, and janky all the way through. But regardless of if you love it or hate it, you got to acknowledge just how nuts this game is, and it's that way right from the start. And number 8 is BioShock Infinite. All the BioShock games have good openings, but there's something particularly special about Infinite's disorienting tour of Columbia, the city in the clouds. Playing this game for the first time, the amount of baffling and bizarre stuff right from the get-go is almost overwhelming, and it does a great job of showing off just how strange this seemingly idyllic city is. This one's different because all the mind-blowing parts of this opening come from just how little of an idea you have about what's going on. The game isn't pulling any tricks or starting you off with something totally unexpected. It's just throwing you into the deep end and saying just go with it. Right from the start, you get paddled into a lighthouse by 2 strangers in rain jackets. Like, you're confused right here. Then there's the body in the lighthouse, the bizarre baptism scene with statues of the founding fathers around. Then you get in the city itself, which is mind-blowing just from the art direction. Like, it's really impressive, even like by today's standards. Then there's the band singing God Only Knows, which came out in 1966, 50 years after this game is set, and the grotesque lottery, and then everyone trying to kill you for having a brand on your hand, calling you the false shepherd. Like, it's a lot to take in, and everything does eventually get explained, but it's just one hell of a crazy opening that leaves you with so many questions, and it takes a while before you get answers. And number 7 is Mortal Shell, another pretty recent game that deserves a mention. Pretty much every Dark Souls or Souls-like game starts off in a confusing fashion. These games love to start you out with very little explanation for what's going on, like what you're doing and even what your goal is even supposed to be. It's all kind of shrouded, and they just kind of slowly expect you to learn everything as you play. What makes Mortal Shell different is by degrees. Sure, these games usually start you off confused, but Mortal Shell really takes the bafflement to the next level with its trippy opening sequence. You start off as this gross-looking zombie/alien thing that rises out of the water, and what follows is basically a tutorial section where you explore this murky, watery location that seems to go on forever. Then you take on the first boss, and when you win, a giant fish appears and swallows you whole. Then you wake up in the quote-unquote real world and crawl through this tunnel that twists in ways that would actually be impossible to get through before wandering up to a dead body and somehow absorbing it into yourself. Like, describing it is more confusing, I would say, than even experiencing it. It's a lot to take in, though, and from here the game basically plays out like what you'd expect, with a few more crazy twists along the way. But as far as opening level madness goes, it definitely got us invested. And number 6 is Nier Replicant. Looking at trailers and stuff for Nier, you probably have an idea about what to expect. Pastoral towns, open fields, your basic fantasy setting, except for you're fighting shadow monsters instead of orcs. And yeah, that's what a lot of the game is, but the opening is something completely different. Keeping in mind that for most of the game you're running around the world, it's basically Legend of Zelda-ish. That's what makes this opening so jarring. Instead of starting in a pastoral village, it begins in the snowy ruins of what looks like a modern day city, and it tells you the date is summer 2053. You're a young survivor trying to protect his sister from these strange monsters, and for some reason there's a book beckoning you to take its power. It's impossible to fight these things normally, so you have to take the power, and the entire opening of the game is your character fighting off these enemies with new abilities. When you return to your sister, she seems to be dying of some weird illness, and this guy shouts out for help. It fades out and hits you with the title card 1412 years later, and now for some reason your same guy's hanging out in a village with his sister like nothing happened. It takes a long time to get any kind of explanation, and to be completely honest, I'm not sure I fully understand it, but like, damn. Maybe these days people expect strangeness in a Yoko Taro game, but back when this first came out, it really blindsided people. And number 5, Ni no Kuni 2's intro. It's kind of a cheat because the actual first level, you're just running around the castle of Ding Dong Dell beating up bad guys. It's not super mind-blowing, but everything that leads up to it is just totally insane. So Ni no Kuni 2, as well as its predecessor, are cute little fantasy games taking an anime style and applying it to the traditional Final Fantasy type game. The second one is more of an action RPG, but like everything looks kid-friendly and harmless, and you're not really expecting any bizarre dark twists or anything. But the second game literally starts with a nuclear explosion. Seriously, that's how it starts. And believe it or not, that's not the only crazy thing about it. After the introductory crawl explaining the fantasy world you're about to enter, the game suddenly shifts into the quote-unquote real world as we follow the President of the United States driving into a city that is suddenly destroyed by a nuclear bomb. Like, that is what happens. And to make it even more jarring, the very next scene is a bunch of cartoon rat people scheming to take over a castle. Then the president, whose name is Roland, somehow appears in the room of the Prince of the Kingdom, and that's when the game starts properly. It's your basic transported to another world story, just with an utterly insane inciting event that starts the whole thing off. Like, you're the president of the United States in a car driving towards a city, which gets blown up by a nuclear bomb, and then suddenly you're in a prince's room. That sentence doesn't make any sense, and yet that's the start of the game. And number 4 is Saints Row 4, a series that got progressively crazier with each new entry. But with the reboot coming next year, it seems like they're going to turn the cray dial back a little bit. I think most of us know how weird 4 is. I mean, it's the one where you have superpowers, so that's something. But it's easy to forget how absolutely mad the entire opening sequence of this game really is. It starts with you hunting the bad guy from Saints Row 3, who has become a terrorist, and culminates with your main dude riding a rocket to Aerosmith's Don't Wanna Miss a Thing, and ends with you literally becoming the president. Then aliens invade, beat you up, and put you in a computer simulation that's a 1950s sitcom for some reason. It's totally nuts what we're saying here. The entire opening level is basically like a Call of Duty parody, and you're taking out like terrorists in this really scripted sequence with generic military stuff going on. Then it suddenly transitions to goofy president jokes. Then it's suddenly Leave It to Beaver mixed with The Matrix, and that's like the first half hour of this game. There aren't really any mind-bending secrets or twists that make the plot make sense at some point either. It's just that the whole thing's so over the top that we had to mention it. And number 3 is The Last of Us. This one isn't so much mind-blowing because of how strange or twisted it is, but because of how unexpected it is. Instead of just starting the game with some big action sequence like you'd normally find in a Naughty Dog game, it starts off pretty quietly. You're not even playing as the main character during the opening section of the game. Instead, you're his daughter, Sarah. It gives this whole opening this sense of dread and discomfort that's very unique. It starts off quiet, but the events quickly spiral out of control as you watch society begin to crumble in real time. After the first minutes, it becomes a pretty seriously harrowing and intense opening that culminates in one of the most tragic moments in any video game. And the way it just hard cuts from Joel of the past to Joel of the quote-unquote present really illustrates how vivid a memory those events are to him. From a story perspective, this opening does an incredible job establishing the world and informing the characters in a way that few games really are able to pull off. It doesn't have some crazy twist or unexpected surprise. It's just one of the all-time best game openings out there, period. The most mind-blowing thing about it is really how much this sort of sequence informs everything Joel does for the rest of the game, especially the ending. And number 2 is Metal Gear Solid 5. We have to mention the opening to this game. It is just a trippy as hell cavalcade of disorientation, and it throws one shocking or bizarre element at you after another. There's so much about this opening sequence with Snake stuck in a hospital bed in first person, and the subsequent escape that's just baffling, bizarre, or just plain crazy. I don't really know exactly where to start. So right from the beginning, you got this long sequence where the man who sold the world plays as you wake up. A doctor explains you've been in a coma for years. They had to amputate your arm, which is already pretty wild, but it only gets crazier. They want to give you plastic surgery, so you select a new face for whatever reason, and then you look the same anyway. An assassin then tries to kill you. The hospital gets swarmed by soldiers, hunting you down while a masked guy protects you. Then there's a flaming man trying to kill you and a floating kid in a gas mask who summons big flame whales. It's whacked out, to say the least. As a longtime Metal Gear fan, probably the most surprising thing about the whole part is the very opening with the mirror and the title card saying "Just Another Day in a War Without End, Outer Heaven," which is the setting of the original Metal Gear on MSX. Everything that follows, though, is so slow, deliberate, and un-video game-like that it's surprising in its own way. The opening sequence is long, and there are long sections where you're basically just looking at the ceiling. The first level is nuts for a lot of reasons, and some people actually hate it because it's so slow and long and doesn't really represent how the game actually plays at all. But it certainly has an impact, if nothing else. And at number 1, the intro to Prey from 2017. And anybody who's played Metal Gear Solid 5 and has been through that intro knows that you have to do something that's totally crazy if you want to put it at number 1 over that. The newer Prey, developed by Arcane, in all honesty, has one of the best first levels ever. The whole thing plays out like a short episode of The Twilight Zone. It almost works as a little story all by itself. Like, it begins with your first day on the job. You start off in an apartment, take a helicopter ride, you join a research team on the satellite Talos 1 run by your brother. You go through a series of these bizarre tests that don't seem to make any sense until a coffee cup suddenly comes to life and starts attacking the researchers. That's when you find out what's really going on. You're actually in a simulated environment on the space station testing these neuromods. The first level lets you look behind the curtain and freely explore how the elaborate ruse was created, and the whole thing is just really cleverly designed and cool to discover. And on top of being just an interesting first level, it layers a ton of foreshadowing for the central mystery of the game and makes you really curious to find out what the hell is even going on here. It's just an all-around great first level and tells you everything you need to know about the world before turning everything on its head. There are plenty more twists you find later in the game, but none of them are quite as crazy and as satisfying as what you discover in this first level. The original Prey 2, to be fair, the 2006 one, also has a pretty great opening level. Seeing the entire bar get sucked up by an alien ship is crazy in a completely different, but also still great way. That's all for today, though. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.